Yo, what's gonna happen to all that junk bouncing around inside your trunk?
We don't want a thump, get you smooth over that bump. The bump, the bump, the bump, the bump, the bump, the bump, the bump. My raised speed bump. Check it out. No bump, no bump, no bump, no bump, no bump, no bump. My lowered speed bump. Check it out.
I think you can expect a golden presentation from your silver team.
Let me introduce you to Tara, one of the EMTs our team spoke to. As a first responder, Tara wants to make sure her patients have the highest chance of survival possible. In serious cases, such as cardiac arrest, every second counts. Every time Tara has to drive through a residential area with several speed bumps, she faces a tough decision. If she slows down, she will lose precious time. If she crosses a speed bump too fast, the patient can suffer. To solve Tara's dilemma, and dilemma every EMT faces, we developed Sentry, a dynamic speed bump system that collapses for emergency vehicles to let them pass without delay. We talked to urban planners and traffic engineers from 17 different cities in 14 different states, and they all emphasized the need for speed reduction. However, cities are often unable to install speed bumps because they want to make sure that emergency services can have fast response times. A single minute in response time can make the difference between life and death for a patient in critical conditions. For a cardiac arrest patient, decreasing the response time by a single minute will increase the chance of survival by 24%. Sentry addresses both the needs of emergency services and traffic engineers by functioning as a normal speed bump for everyday vehicles while maintaining free roads for emergency services such as Tara. Emil will now introduce you to our system.
Sentry is a system made up of 3 components. A mechanical speed bump that rises and collapses. A traffic sign with LEDs to indicate the state of the bump. And electronic sensors that communicate with approaching emergency vehicles. When an emergency vehicle approaches, the vehicle transmits a signal to Sentry's sensors. These sensors can be modified to retrofit a municipality's existing system, such as using radio transmitters, GPS, or siren recognition. This process begins at a distance of 1,500 feet, which gives a vehicle traveling at 50 miles per hour 20 seconds to prepare for the bump. As you can see, the flashing LEDs indicate the lowering of the bump. Once the bump is fully collapsed, the LEDs turn a solid green, indicating that it is safe to drive over at full speed. An ambulance will drive over Sentry without having to compromise patient safety or speed. Now the bump returns to its initial raised position, functioning as a normal speed bump. We now like to demonstrate how non-emergency vehicles interact with Sentry. We will have our vehicle drive over the bump once again in its raised position this time. You got it, Chris. Non-emergency vehicles will feel little to no difference between Sentry and conventional speed bumps. Now let's take a look at how this all works. A radio receiver is mounted at the top of our traffic sign and communicates with a processor located inside the bump enclosure. This processor interprets the signal from the receiver and actuates the bump accordingly. Our entire system is powered off of a single line from the local power grid and consumes a maximum of 720 watts, which is less than your typical hairdryer. Inside the bump enclosure, 4 scissor jacks are used to raise and lower the bump over a range of 3 inches. This action is completed in under 10 seconds. Now, what you see here is a scaled down version of our product specifically designed for this auditorium. However, our final design is much bigger and can hold a maximum load of 40,000 pounds, which is more than the weight of a fully loaded school bus. To create the bump shape, the scissor jacks raise a set of 3 steel plates that are hinged together to provide a continuous surface. A rubber surface layer is also installed for additional traction and to help seal our mechanism from the outside environment. All of our scissor jacks and electronic components are mounted in weatherproof enclosures to increase the durability of Sentry. Now here's John Michael with how cities will use our product.
Thank you, Emil. Sentry was designed with ease of installation in mind. Many cities are hesitant to close down roads for construction, but our self-contained unit makes it easy for workers to excavate, drop in Sentry, and secure it to the road using asphalt anchors. This entire process will take less than 1 day for work crews to complete. Sentry's enhanced capabilities place it in a special market known as smart traffic calming. Other smart traffic calming devices include radar speed limit signs, smart traffic lights, and red light traffic cameras, all of which are commonplace in many cities across the US, and range in price from $6,000 to $60,000 US. Sentry will be sold to cities for $20,000, putting it comfortably within this range and allowing cities to purchase it. Additional costs will need to be considered for installation, but these are comparable to those of conventional speed bumps, which many cities already account for in their budgets. As a starting point for distribution, we plan to work with 3 cities that have shown the most significant interest in our products so far and have been instrumental in our product's design. Each of these cities will receive 4 bumps and complete systems for use in 1 year. These systems will be used to gather data on how emergency responders actually interact with our system and will help us make improvements so that we can further expand to more roads and new cities. We also plan to expand the functionality of our product. We can do so using Sentry's modular architecture. We can make changes to individual components of our system without compromising the entire system. For instance, we can adjust the scissor jacks to handle heavier loads for heavier vehicles. We can adjust the profile of the bump to handle roads with higher speed limits. And we can even make a programmable version which is suitable for areas with scheduled activity, such as school zones. And these are just a few of the changes we can make to our product. Sentry's collapsible speed bump removes the obstacles for emergency responders, helping them keep us safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Silver Team. We have a question in the house? Yep.
Hi, yeah, I'm from Minnesota, and the roads get really destroyed by snow and ice and other serious winter weather conditions. And I'm pretty concerned that this would not hold up well under those conditions.
Good question. So for the overall design of our speed bump, it lifts around 40,000 pounds, so we aren't that concerned with the ice buildup on the hinges or any snow buildup, preventing it from establishing a lifted position. Additionally, we're also implementing IP68 electronics enclosures within the bump itself to prevent those electronics housings from potential ice buildup or any dust or water getting inside. For final consideration of snow plows, for those, we're planning on potentially outfitting them with signaling systems similar to those used on emergency vehicles, so that the bump would be signaled and put in the down state when those vehicles approach and they could pass over undisturbed.
Thank you. Great answer. Question there.
Hi, so 2 questions. How long do you think that one of these is going to last, as in like how long before it should be replaced? And second of all, is it safe to drive over while it's still in its transitioning state, if, for instance, it doesn't transition fast enough for the emergency vehicle, or if there are other vehicles ahead of the emergency vehicle which would need to drive over it in order to get out of its way?
Yeah, so for the second part of your question, the jacks are rated to lift 3 tons each, so the car can be driving over the mechanism while it's lifting with no problem. what was the first part? Sorry.
Could you repeat the first part?
Oh, the first part of my question was how long do you anticipate that one of these will last, as in like how often
Lifetime.
would it need to be replaced?
Sorry.
So we weren't able to do accelerated life cycle testing within the scope of this class, but that's definitely something that we intend to do before releasing this to production.
Thank you. Question there?
Yeah, I had a question on how easy it is to do maintenance on this, and if it is like pretty simple to open it up and just check and see what's going on inside. I know a lot of people think it's funny to steal signs, so I could also see people thinking it's funny to open a speed bump. So what are the measures that are going to be put in place to stop that from happening, but still make it easy to maintain?
Yes. Thank you for your question. For the first part of your question in regards to installation, so the plan is that when we're providing cities with these units, that they'll be provided a certain number of backup units so that if any maintenance needs to be done, you can take the entire unit out, replace it with a fully functioning one so that the roads are still able to be used while we're performing maintenance on these systems. For the second part of the question, is about signs, and so we are in the process of looking at different enclosures that would be, you would need specific tools that would only be usable by the maintenance crews to prevent tampering with. Additionally, so our current sign is rolling, as you've seen, but we plan on implementing road signs that are installed into the ground like traditional road signs.
Thank you. Question there?
So you talked about the compressive load, but so a lot of faster cars with a lot of horsepower also have very low clearance. Have you thought about the sheer force of some person who's not paying attention hitting this at 100 miles an hour while joyriding in their Ferrari or something?
Yeah, so as most speed bumps are, we did design this speed bump for the proper use case. A normal speed bump also would not really treat a car well in that situation. But we did design the speed bump to account for forces in any direction. So the scissor jacks are staggered so that it does account for also the shear force.
Just a couple more questions. We'll take one here.
So I noticed the duration for emergency responders might be a little too long. It was about 12 seconds. Obviously, they go at a much faster speed than a normal car. Is there any way you could decrease that time?
Great question. The question was about response time.
Can we clarify that one more time?
Sure, yeah. The response time is about 12 seconds, but if emergency vehicles are going faster, could you decrease that response time?
So the way that we did our calculations to get this time frame is that if there was to be an error and our bump could not completely collapse before the ambulance arrived at the bump, it needed to be able to slow to a speed that was acceptable to take the bump as is. So it does seem a little bit longer than if the ambulance was going at full speed, but our sign, which you didn't see in this presentation because we didn't have an error, actually flashes red, and that would allow them to have enough time to slow down to the acceptable speed.
Thank you. Question here?
Hey, great job, guys. Wondering what happens if the drive mechanism fails with a bump in the up position. Is it possible to manually lower it so you can just get rid of the bump so emergency vehicles can pass?
Yeah, so right now we would have to take the bump out for maintenance. That's definitely something we want to consider in the future. But if it does get stuck up, this signaling will properly alert emergency services so that they know that they're going to be slowing down for it.
Thank you. Two more questions. We have one there.
Yeah, so will you guys have to commercialize the actual sensors, and how will you implement that into like the ambulances and, as you said, tow trucks, snow plows, I mean? Like, how are you going to sell that?
So the way that we were planning on working with the sensors is we talk with each of the individual municipalities to see what systems they already have. Some of them, like Cambridge, don't have any kind of system that they use for triggering something like a stoplight. So what we would look to do is find a variety of different sensors that we could then offer them and then integrate into our system. For the municipalities that do have traffic preemption systems that they would use to like turn off a row of stoplights, what we would try to do then is use the receivers to then trigger our system, integrate it. The idea is that our system is supposed to be modular so that then we can integrate a variety of different options depending on what each municipality needs.